So my name is Dr. Colin Zhu. I appreciate you guys coming out. I want to thank the Vegan Society of Hawaii for inviting me out. This is currently my third leg of the three-island tour. I spoke at Maui on Thursday on the 1st, and then I just came in from Oahu this morning. So we were there at their, I guess, regional down-to-earth store, and we gave a presentation there and a demo as well. So how this is going to be set up, this is a little bit different since you guys are eating and having a potluck, so that's good. At least you're doing something with your hands, right? So we're going to have a lecture first, about like 30 minutes, and then we'll switch over to the demo. Naturally, there's going to be questions that come up and arise, so I would ask you guys to kind of hold it until the demo, and I can answer your questions as I'm cooking, all right? So good to go? Good to go? All right, great. So my presentation, I'm not blocking. Am I blocking? You're okay? So my presentation is titled Rooted in Plants and Planet, and it's a presentation about food and global sustainability. You guys could hear me in the back, right? Okay. So I'm originally from New Jersey, United States of America, and we talk really fast and we talk really loud, so in case I go too fast, you let me know. And I decided to talk about this because we're in a very critical decade, which I'm going to go into a little bit more, and yeah, I hope you guys like it. So a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm originally from the northeast part of the United States. I'm a first-generation immigrant child, so both my parents immigrated here from southern China and Hong Kong. And I am board certified in family medicine, also known as general practice. And I've specialized and got board certified in lifestyle medicine. I graduated in between medical school and my residency training practice. I went to culinary school, and you might be asking yourself, why would a doctor enroll themselves into culinary school? Well, my mother is a Chinese medical doctor. She's an acupuncturist and herbalist, and I grew up, in her household and office. Really, her upbringing was a lot about prevention, wellness, and looking at the person in a very holistic manner. And so my upbringing was all that. That's all I knew. And so I wanted to go into school, wanting to blend Eastern and Western philosophies. When I went into school, I realized that, everyone that walked through our door, whether it's a cough or a low back pain, type of complaint, always had some sort of chronic lifestyle-related issue attached to them, whether it be high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer. Raise of hands, how many people know someone with high blood pressure? All right. How many of you guys know of someone with diabetes or problems with their sugar? All right, cholesterol? Cancer? All right, thyroid issues? Overweight issues? You guys just like to raise your hand up and down, right? So because of that, I realized that I needed to know more about nutrition. And so our schooling system and training at the time didn't prepare us enough. So I took a lot of detours. I enrolled myself in cooking school, not just any cooking school, but a health-supported and plant-based culinary school. And then prior to COVID, I also love to travel. I've traveled to 35 countries and hit every continent on the planet. And I'm an advanced open water scuba diver, and I'll tell you why that's important later on. So why did I cook and what did I learn about food? So my experiences growing up were both of my parents cooked. I had the fortunate privilege of having both my parents cook and was very comfortable in and out. I come from a Chinese household, so mainly Asian cuisines. And I went into whole food plant-based about 8 years ago when I was training for my first marathon in New York City. And my transition was more for recovery and sports performance. I realized that when I was training, I wanted to recover faster. And I realized with the literature, I could recover faster, and I just learned a lot about it. So after my marathon training, I transitioned into it, and noticed that I was, performing a lot better. And so I wanted to learn more about food, not just nutrition. I wanted to know where it came from, how it's sourced, how it's put together, working with different food, taste, flavor palettes, and learning more about plants. I did an internship, and then from there, I used that education to give talks. And so I also specialize in something called culinary medicine. And culinary medicine is a newer evidence-based field that blends the art of cooking with the science of medicine and nutrition. And you're basically utilizing that and applying that for the well-being of our patients. So what is the best way to learn about food? How many of you guys cook by yourselves? Okay, this was better than yesterday's grade. How many of you guys cook with other people? Okay, that's similar to yesterday, all right. So a lot about food is, from my experience, is really about experimenting. It's about messing up, repeating it, practicing, doing it again. I'm not really a follow a recipe type of person. I'm really about, okay, if I really like a dish, right, how can I use my senses to give me information on how to get to what I need to do to put it together? That's how my mother, brought me up cooking, and she never followed the recipe. Growing up, we ate all kinds of fast food. Everything you could think of, fast food chains, deliveries. We had a Happy Meal every, Saturday, after Chinese school on Saturdays. Yeah, we ate the whole gamut. That's before we knew, that it affected our health. Nothing is perfect the first time, and I tell my patients that cooking is really about the meal prep. It's not about so much the cooking. Cooking is actually the fun and easy part of it. It's really about the meal prep, especially if you're cooking more with plants. So this is just a video. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear, but as part of what I do, I get consulted and asked and hired to do various different things. This is a short clip of Johns Hopkins out of Baltimore, Maryland, who hired me to teach their medical residents because they were giving community classes to their neighbors, to their community members. So it was kind of like teach a teacher, which was a fabulous, concept. So they hired me for 3 workshops. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, at Johns Hopkins, did you teach the doctors how to do this COLIN?
I taught the doctors in training. Yeah. Did I also work at Johns Hopkins? Yeah. No, I did not. I wasn't that smart, so. Okay, so I'm just going to play this video. So everyone that's cooking is a doctor in training. Some of them brought their own kids. So the boy in the screen, he's a neighborhood kid. He's not a doctor in training. He just rode his bike up to the church where they hold the meetings. And yeah, he just wanted to learn, so. All right. So you get the idea. All right. So why do I travel? So traveling for me was teaching about the world outside of our backyard. How many of you guys are originally from Hawaii? How many of you guys are from somewhere else? Okay, all right. So if you are from somewhere else, that means you have some travel experience, right? So what it taught me was really teaching about, other people's way of life, perspectives, how they live. It taught me about other people's cultures, and it gave me values of, teaching me values of respect, humility, and tolerance. And it really taught me this concept of global citizenship, how, we're all neighbors, we all live on the same planet, and to me, in my head, there's no such thing as borders, okay? It was also my firsthand experience of witnessing climate change. I also scuba dive. And because you guys are so close to everything, this means more to you guys. So I was talking to, I think it was Carol or Susan, that my place of Zen is really underwater, okay? And for me, it was just a beautiful moment to just sit back and just observe when, life, especially nowadays, can be very noisy and very distractful, right? It was also my experience of coral bleaching. So raise of hand, how much of the ocean have we explored? 5%, raise your hand. That we actually explored. 5%? How about 10%? How about 15? 50%. 50, all right. It's actually 20. We've actually explored only 20, so that means 80% is unexplored, unmapped, right? So while we're funneling money to go travel to Mars, we don't know much about our waters, right? So what did I learn about these experiences? Well, it taught me that the world is much bigger than what I thought it was, and it really conveyed this concept of breaking the snow globe. And what that means is that, in our heads, sometimes we can live in a microcosm. And if we, gave the opportunity to kind of break out of that, then we have a lot of opportunities to learn. And the biggest things that I've learned is that everything is interconnected, okay? So bringing this back home, how does this relate to food, okay? So I'm using one condition, obesity. This is a data set. In 17 and 18, probably more so now, 1 out of 3 adults are considered overweight. More than 40% have obesity. Obesity is defined as body mass index of 30 or above, okay? And 1 out of 11 adults have severe obesity. How many know of someone that is carrying extra weight with them? Okay. So what is the issue with this besides the actual health condition? Well, economically, it's a huge burden. In 2014, it was estimated that just with obesity, it has an economic impact of 2.0 trillion with a T, okay? And that's around about 3% of the global GDP. Indirect costs would be production loss, loss of work days, and permanent disability. They did a really big study called a systematic analysis, and they looked at the dietary risks of over 195 countries between 1990 and 2017. They said that dietary risks were responsible for 11 million deaths. Cardiovascular disease was leading it, followed by cancer and diabetes. And they've noticed that they had some commonalities, okay? Diets that were high in sodium, low in whole grains, low in fruit, low in nuts and seeds, and low in vegetables and omega-3s accounted more than 2% of global deaths. So what are some reasons to eat more plants, right? This is the Vegan Society of Hawaii. You can't really go on without talking about plants, right? It helps to lower cancer-promoting growth hormone levels. It inhibits angiogenesis, which is kind of like the blood supply for cancer growth. It helps to boost enzymes, lower inflammation. Healthier poops. Who likes to have healthier poops? Oh, no one wants to admit that one, all right. Lowers excess estrogen and cholesterol. So, how does this relate to the world? Like I said, we are in an interconnected web. I just visited 1 week ago, Monday. I visited a farm in northern Ohio. And a very unique farm where they practice regenerative, sustainable farming practices. And currently, does anyone have an idea of how we currently farm? Especially after the World War. In the last 50 years, how do we currently farm now? And why do you think it, how do we currently farm, and do you think it's sustainable or not sustainable? Anyone want to venture a guess?
Well, they grow the same crop over and over again.
Monocropping?
Switches crops and switches what they grow.
Mm-hmm.
Put stuff back into the dirt.
Yep. So do you feel like because monocropping, single, crops, does that mean that the soil is nutritious or not?
Right,
It's not, okay.
which is why alfalfa is generally used in regenerative crops, right?
Well, alfalfa is,
You can re-till back into it
you could. Alfalfa is pretty up there in terms of also genetically modified, organisms as well. So does anyone think an apple today is more nutritious than an apple 50 years ago? Does anyone think an apple today is less than an apple 50 years ago? Yeah. So what that means is that because of how we practice agriculture, it means environmental effects on climate change, loss of biodiversity, degradation of land and soil, and depletion of fresh water, okay? And evidence has shown that when you're shifting from animals to plants, it's associated with more, with less emission of greenhouse gases, and it's more sustainable agriculturally. So Carl Folk, he's a sustainability expert. It's pretty cool. And he coined this concept called planetary stewardship, which to me is having a responsibility because of the fact that we live on the same planet. And he says that for the best way for the current 7.8 billion inhabitants to live together is to really alter the lens of how we look at the world. And he says that we're dependent on the biosphere and our actions and the impact that it has to sustain us. So currently, the state of the world, I don't know, does anyone remember the United Nations 17 sustainable goals, developmental goals? Does anyone know what I'm talking about, or you do? Okay, great. So the UN General Assembly, they had these 17 sustainable goals. Hunger, ending hunger, improving inequities, improving communities, improving our waters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Healthcare. And it's still going on right now, started in 2015 with the goal of achieving this in 2030, okay? The Paris Agreement, probably people hear about that more, of not going above 2 degrees Celsius in terms of the overall temperature of the planet. Something really cool, the Earthshot Mission, which got started by Prince William last year, was really, really cool. Has anyone heard of the Earthshot Mission? Anyone heard of the Moonshot Mission by JFK, 1969? So Prince William coined that, from that, and it was his way of being able to award innovators and entrepreneurs to be able to save the planet in terms of reducing food waste, saving the oceans, et cetera. So that's what's happening currently. So now to the good stuff. How do we choose to eat affects our land? Anyone heard of factory farming? Yeah. Okay. So is there factory farming in the Hawaiian Islands?
Sure.
Sure. Where and what?
Corn. GMO corn.
Well, I'm talking about factory farming in terms of livestock.
Yeah, we have cattle ranches here.
Well,
CAFOs, concentrated animal.
No, it's not concentrated.
Most of them are gone now.
Okay.
The dairy, we don't have a dairy.
Okay.
We used to have a couple on the Big Island, but they got shut down.
Okay. So on the mainland, we got plenty, right? We got CAFOs, which stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations. We have that for livestock, cows, chickens, anything you can think of, pigs, all right? And what ends up happening is that people live around these factory farms. It affects the community, affects their health and well-being. And when you're growing, when you're trying to produce this amount of animal protein, which is fueled by demand, heavy demand, you need a lot of input. You need land, you need water, you need energy, okay? The Amazon, not the retailer, the actual Amazon, is disappearing day by day because of the fact that they have to mow down and cut down the forests to be able to provide for the livestock, to raise crops for it.
Yeah,
More.
McDonald's is probably your biggest customer.
Say again?
So McDonald's is probably your biggest customer, or Amazon.
Not good soil either.
70% of the Earth's agricultural land is used for livestock production. 70%. 30% of the Earth's land mass is used for livestock. So who knows of someone that eats only animals all year round, 365? Okay. Okay. So just to kind of give you a picture, you need 3 football fields to sustain one person that's eating animals for a whole year. One person. Okay. So in the United States, on the mainland, we have around 350, 360, 370-ish millions of people. So
Now, say that again, they're only eating meat all year round?
yeah, animal based. So the standard American diet. Yeah. So predominantly animals, right? So in order to sustain that, you need 3 football fields to sustain one person. When you're shifting towards plant-based, okay, you're able to save 50% of that land. So this is a graph. It actually shows up. This is a graph of the footprints of how much land is used if you were to, produce animal protein versus plant protein. And as you can see, a lot of the animal protein, we need more land. We need a lot less land for plant protein, okay?
We do have a shrimp farm, commercial,
A shrimp farm?
on the west side, and they definitely get polluting the ocean.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to talk about farming fish. So the big picture is that deforestation leads to replacement of crops for animal feeds, right? So instead of using the land to grow a variety and diversity of plants, you're using it to just grow certain crops just to feed the livestock, right? And then that animal is, you need to create grazing grounds, and then once they are up to snuff, quote unquote, they are trucked to slaughterhouses, and then from the slaughterhouses, they're trucked to groceries and restaurants, and that's how they end up in your plate. Okay, how we choose to eat affects our water. Seafood impact. I'm sure you guys have some inkling of this. Maybe, maybe not. Factory farming has runoff, okay? So the waste and contaminates the rivers and the oceans. Again, growing huge quantities of grain and corn, which are needed to feed the livestock, uses a massive amount of water. They say that because of our demand of seafood, for example, we overconsume, we destroy ecosystems, and they say that by 2048, all of the world's fisheries could collapse. That's around, what, 26 years from now? It's not that long. And trawling vessels rip off sea life and destroy coral life. And then the farming, like you were saying, how do we feed the fish? Well, let me ask you this. Why do we have farms, fish farms? Why? Yeah. Well, that's a byproduct. Yes. So you have to produce your own fish, right? So how do they feed the fish in the farms?
So usually like a shrimp is some kind of a high protein form or something.
Yeah. They actually use other fish. So this is the amount of water used for livestock, okay? So on the right, that's gallons per pound, okay? And on the right, you have steak, pork, beef, chicken, eggs, okay? And on the left, you have more plant proteins. How we choose to eat affects our air. So the air quality, okay, from the neighboring communities, dangerous gases like ammonia, methane, hydrogen sulfide, these are breakdown products. How many of you guys think that they actually affect our health? It causes chronic illnesses. It causes neurological issues. Not surprisingly, people of color are situated closer to these factory farms as opposed to their white counterparts. This is just a random statistic. 9 billion chickens are raised annually, and 22.5 billion amounts of feces is produced by those chickens. From 1960 to 2016, 215% has been an increase because there's been more of a demand of chicken. I think I just heard that there's like a new Chick-fil-A. Was that here or was that in another island? There's like, not here, right? Chick-fil-A is, you see lines for Chick-fil-A. Even in the mainlands, you still see lines. How we choose to eat affects climate. So, climate impacts. So, island nations, so referring to Southeast Asian, like Indonesia. How many of you guys remember the tsunami in Indonesia? All right. So, you have things like storms, flooding, okay? In terms of the United States, Louisiana, anyone been to New Orleans, Louisiana? No? Well, it's a very low-lying place bordering the Gulf of Mexico, and they're also facing displacement of communities because of everything. How many of you guys hear in the news recently of Pakistan having major flooding? Thousands and thousands have already died because of flooding. So it's clear that animal agriculture is a major driver towards that climate change. A lot of fossil fuel is needed to be able to grow the animal feed, raise and process these same crops to give to the livestock. And even just having locally produced animal protein is not that great either because it's an inefficient way of converting these natural resources into actual food. The biggest takeaway I want you guys to leave home, if you leave nothing else, is that industrial animal agriculture contributes to more greenhouse gases, more than the entire transportation sector. So that's cars, planes, trains, buses, trucks, and ships. So this is a video that I took myself. I went to Antarctica. We were on a boat and we came to a cul-de-sac, and I just noticed this and I captured it. So that is happening every single second as we speak, okay? This area didn't used to be a lake. It used to be still part of that glacier, okay? It just got receded in because sea levels are rising, planet is warming up. These are CO2 emissions from food. On the far left, you got beef, cheese, pork, salmon, okay? Far right, you have plant proteins, okay? So, what can we do? So there was a commission that was started back in 2019, and they paired up with The Lancet, which is a premier medical journal, and they came up with something called the Planetary Health Diet, okay? What they did was they needed to scientifically have targets of having a certain type of sustainable diet to maintain personal health as well as planetary health. And at the time, they recommended a flexitarian diet, which they advised no more than 5 servings of meat per week, okay? And they advised and advocated eating a lot more nuts, legumes, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, and decreasing saturated fat, dairy products, starchy vegetables, and salt, okay? They needed to work with certain, areas and cultures where, it's, possible and doable and feasible, okay? So the United Nations estimate around 10 billion people by 2050. So the question is, how do we feed 10 billion people within planetary boundaries? How many of you guys have children? How many of you guys have grandchildren? All right. How many of you guys know of someone that have grandchildren or great-grandchildren? Okay. So this question is for them. A couple actions is, the number one action is really about with your fork. You guys are eating a lovely meal, this is a lovely gathering, but many people may not know is that it's a very powerful thing to do. It's a voting system, right? When you are choosing to eating more plants, you are effectively decreasing demand of animal-based, sources, right? How many believe that food waste contributes to CO2 emissions? Okay. Yes, food waste. How many believe, what percentage of food waste do Americans waste? 10%, raise your hand. 20%. Food waste. So you go to the groceries, after a week, you're gonna waste a X amount of percentage. 20%, 30%, 40%. Yeah, so it's about 40%. 40%, yeah. And when you're reducing food waste, you're effectively also going to account for 6% of all greenhouse gases just by reducing food waste, okay? Like I was talking about the farming practice, we are wanting to trap carbon instead of letting carbon go. And we want to circulate nutrients. We were just talking about that. And we also want to not pollute and save water. So if we're able to update our farming practices, we can do better. This is the farm that I went on last Monday, okay? In northern Ohio. It's a regenerative, sustainable farm. I went there to tour and film, so I'll put that on my, I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast, and I have a book. What I'd like to do more of is actually go on location to be able to film certain companies and organizations making an impact. These guys were one of them. Amazing, amazing company. 2-generation farmers. They're all vegetable farmers. They've done home delivery boxes during the pandemic. So what's cool about them is that they have a culinary institute on grounds. They have a research and development lab on grounds. And through their lab, they were able to test their own produce, okay? They have anywhere from 300 to 600% more nutrition in terms of macro and micronutrients than the conventional produce.
They don't look like field hands.
Huh?
They don't look like workers.
Well, these are, kind of the head people. So action steps you can do. Choose to cook more with plants, vote and buy with your fork, and join a CSA, a community sustainable agricultural organization. Reduce food waste, recycle and compost, and if you can, grow your own food. Everywhere I go, I have all kinds of people from all different walks of life, so I have an action step for every single one. So if you are some sort of wellness coach, I would implore you to deliver more talks. If you're a chef, I want you to, deliver more workshops of kitchen skills and cooking with more plants. If you're a doc, give more talks, learn about food. If you're a community member, cook with, family members, cook with others. There's a lot of positive health predictors if you're able to cook with others, if you're able to reinforce those connections and reinforce those relationships. Make family dinner a thing again and grow your own food or join the garden. If you're a healthcare system, be creative and help out your fellow employees and patients. This is a good friend of mine. I wanted to highlight him. He started one of the first urban hospital rooftop gardens. So they made a rooftop garden on top of a hospital. The produce from that garden goes to the cafeteria, which goes to the patients. It's pretty cool, right? And this is in Manhattan. So if you can do it in Manhattan, okay? These are different plant food alternatives. I get a lot of patients that ask me, hey doc, what about Impossible Foods or Beyond Burger, things like that? And I say that, well, that's for transitioning, right? The goal is to eat as close to Mother Nature as possible, okay? Whole, intact, okay? If you have to transition, that's fine, but just not forever, and do it moderately, okay?
You would call that processed food.
That's still processed food, that's correct. You're absolutely right.
GMO.
Yeah. So like I said, not forever. So these are suggested resources. These are my references, and this is my contact information. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And we're going to shift to the demo, and you can ask me questions. Any questions right off the bat? this concludes my talk portion. No? Great. We're good to go? All right, so I'm going to be demonstrating 2 recipes. The first recipe is called Asian-style tofu lettuce boats. Okay, so we're taking, heats up pretty fast. We're taking butter lettuce leaves. So they kind of form like little cups, okay? And what I like to do is put them on top of each other like this, so it forms like a little cup or boat, okay? So apologize in advance if you guys want, we typically have recipes printed out, but if you want to leave your email, we can send it to you as well, so. So basically we're using extra firm tofu, and we're going to be sauteing it, and what I put in before is vegetable stock.
So not oil?
Not oil. How many of you guys cook with oil at home?
Not much.
Not much.
If it's not, I use coconut.
How many of you guys believe that oil is a processed food? It's the same participants raising their hands. So this is just an exercise. Why do you think it's a processed food? It has to be what? So take like olive oil. How do you get the oil? Mm-hmm. It's typically cold pressed, yeah.
And you can get more refined or less processed part of the.
So we are using extra firm tofu, right? So tofu is actually processed as well, okay? What's the whole form? Oh, seems like he wants to eat too. Huh? Soybeans? Yep. Has anyone tried to make tofu at home? Yeah? It's interesting to make, right?
It's easier to buy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a healthy product.
So there's different forms of tofu. There's the silken kind all the way to extra firm.
Is it all that soy in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't there a soy like tofu that's fermented has a different Japanese name to it?
Has different what?
It's fermented. That's using it as tempeh. No, not tempeh. Well, tempeh I would say is healthier.
It is not fermented in terms of tofu. What it is that it's blended up, okay? It gets strained, typically through a cheesecloth. They have a contraption where you press it as well. And then there is a chelating agent a coagulating agent that helps to make it firm again. So basically what we did was we did tofu, we did shiitake mushrooms, okay? So yes, so we got that going on. How many of you guys like mushrooms? Okay. What is your favorite mushroom dish? Plain mushrooms fried. What kind of mushrooms? Any kind? Yeah, yeah. So MSG, where do you think MSG comes from? Nope. It comes from mushrooms. The natural form of MSG is actually mushrooms. Huh? MSG.
I mean, did they make it synthetically?
Yes, MSG. So there's a lot of flavoring. So if you understand the plant kingdom, there's a lot of ways that you can increase certain flavor profiles. So people like to be savory, right? Who's a savory type of person? Who's a sweet type of person? What's your favorite sweet? Chocolate. Okay. So another note about oil is that why do people cook with oil? Huh? They're conditioned. Okay.
I use water sometimes, but unfortunately, I like the earth balance margarine.
Okay. Okay. Margarine, is that processed? It's very processed. So when you're using broth, it evaporates, so you just kind of have to add more, and you're using your either wooden spoon or a silicone spatula to be able to push things around so it doesn't stick. I like to use stainless steel. If you want non-stick, I would recommend like ceramic. I would avoid aluminum. Yeah. Like the common non-stick pans. All right, so what we're going to do is that we're going to cook this down, okay? And my volunteers been awesome in terms of prepping the other ingredients. So we had minced ginger in there. We got the whites of scallions in there. How many of you guys cook at home once a day? Oh. 2 days out of the week. 2 days out of the week. 3 days out of the week. Huh? Every day? Anyone every day? Wow, this must be a special group.
No, it's not a special place. They don't have very many good places to eat.
So you just have to be, you're just you're just pigeon-toed. I mean, you could eat out all the time.
Not here, you
So I'm also going to put, you can use low sodium soy sauce, or I'm using tamari. Okay. Has anyone used tamari before? So what I put in was tamari. Tamari is, it helps people with more gluten sensitivity. But of course, either one, you gotta pay attention to sodium levels. Check to see if you have blood pressure issues. And so we did a fresh squeeze OJ, orange juice, to give it a little bit of sweetness to it. And then cook it down some more. And then what we're gonna do is, the recipe calls for tapioca. Tapioca flour, but the stores didn't have it, so we're going to use potato flour. And the point of it is using it as a thickening agent. Okay, you can use cornstarch, but I like to use tapioca flour. It just depends on what you guys have in the stores. I just went to Safeway. So as you're cooking this more, can you guys smell this? Yep. We're gonna do red cabbage. We're gonna do some sliced carrots. And then we're gonna do some jicama. Has anyone of you guys used jicama before? So when I tell people and when they ask me, Doc, how do I eat more plant-based? Well, I tell them, number one, when you're in a supermarket, just stand in one section of the supermarket. And where do you think I tell them to stand? The produce section. And go nowhere else. If you have to go in the middle of the supermarket, if you have to. So I tell people that real food doesn't have a nutrition label, right? Real food only really just has one ingredient, right? If you have to search for something on the shelves, how do we keep things on the shelves? What do we put inside of it to keep it on the shelf?
Salt, sugar,
Preservatives. Chemicals, binders, additives. Yep. So I tell them, generally search for 5 ingredients or less, or if your grandma can't pronounce a certain ingredient, probably don't get it. All right. So a jicama, has anyone used a jicama before? So jicama is a root vegetable, came from Central America, Mexico, did make its way to the Philippines and Southeast Asia. It's great. So I'm glad. Yeah, I was happy that you guys had it here. All right, so we are pretty much done. So how I did this with the other group is I could put it all into one platter, and then we could serve it. Can you hand me another red plate?
Just a whole plate?
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Just one more. Thank you. So this concludes, we'll pass this around, no rush. This concludes, this is the lettuce boats. Just want to turn this off. So we're going to do, what we do is that we're going to scoop it in. We're going to scoop it in, and then we're going to garnish it with the other greens. And I think we have enough to serve. So, any questions? Garnish it with the green parts of the scallion, as well as some minced cilantro.
So what are your responses in places where there's not so much grainy vegetables like we have here in Hawaii?
Yeah.
I mean, was there a lot of...
Grow your food. Try to grow your food, and if you have to travel further to get food, it's Food access is an issue everywhere, not just, even in the mainland, people have issues with food access. Food access is defined by not having a high quality supermarket with less than a mile of you. I've had patients where they would have to drive 20, 25 minutes to get to an actual good supermarket, so.
I have a question.
Yep.
So you mentioned you weren't really raised in a plant-based environment, although both of your parents cooked. So what actually made you go into the culinary arts and focus on?
So I wasn't raised in plant-based. Living in a Chinese household, we ate everything. Chinese cuisine is more about balance and things in harmony. So we had equal portions of everything: meat, seafood, grains, things like that. So when I was transitioning, it was during the time when I was preparing for my first marathon, and having read the literature, I said to myself, okay, let me go try it, and I realized that my performance was better, and so I just stuck with it. And for me, in terms of patient care, I find it to be more effective when you are actually doing what you're preaching to your patients. So, yeah, I just stuck with it, and yeah, the rest is history. Does that answer your question?
Have you ever, in certain situations, have you taught how to sprout?
How's it what?
How to sprout?
Sprout.
Yeah, like a lot of places where it's really hard to get vegetables, like right now it's really hot season, so I turned to starting alfalfa sprouts and spicy sprouts and broccoli sprouts.
Yeah, so, like you said, I think this gentleman said here, you got to do what you got to do to survive, So, over the pandemic, there's been a boom of indoor, gardening, like hydroponics, things like that. I tell people to start small, do a herb garden first, you know what I'm saying? Whatever you can.
I just wondered if you taught any.
Not in terms of sprouting specifically.
Because it's such an easy way to get vegetables.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the city and, there's not going to be, it's a city, you have to go wherever you have to go to find fresh vegetables, and it's much more work. While you get some sprout seeds and start jarring, and all of a sudden you've got some food right.
Yep. You can do, you can pickle, you can do your own fermenting. You can do, a lot of, jarring if you wanted to.
I was just thinking about the easiest way for people to get more vegetables in their diet.
Yeah, I definitely hear you.
So when you were training for the marathon, just out of curiosity, did you read Grape by Brandes Brazier?
I read that book a lot later, actually. I have heard of him. Yeah, he's pretty up there in terms of one of the earliest vegan athletes.
Yeah, he's a triathlon.
Yeah.
He actually did when it was the Vegetarian Hawaii Society, he came and did a nice lecture.
What's his name?
Brendan Brazier, he's the author of Thrive. He also creates the Vega products, like there's protein shakes and all those things. And he's an Ironman triathlete. But that's essentially how he discovered the plant-based diet. Is he wanted to
Be better.
in performance, and he found that his body was able to recover much quicker than anyone else.
Yeah, I don't perform at his level, so this was. Has anyone watched documentaries? Like to watch documentaries? Which ones have you watched? So Forks Over Knives is a good one. Has anyone watched The Game Changers? Cowspiracy, Seaspiracy.
I've got a question. While you were over on Oahu, did you meet Dr. Ruth?
I did not. I did not.
She used to be an Ironman triathlete, and she overcame breast cancer by turning
Yeah, I can believe that.
She's in her 80s now. She's amazing.
Yeah. No, she personally said that, she personally reached out to me and said that she couldn't make it, so.
She's a neat lady.
All right, so I am going to transition. If one of you guys would love to kind of pass one to everybody, and then I'll transition to the next one.
Should everybody take one?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next recipe I'm going to make really quickly is called yogurt grape pops. This is a non-dairy yogurt. To me, has been great. Non-dairy yogurt just came on the scene maybe like a year ago. You have like yogurt and like coconut milk, cashew milk, soy milk. So basically, very simple. You could do this with grapes or blueberries. You know, you can do like 2 or 3 blueberries and just stick them on a skewer. This is great for party platters, snacks for your kids. Very simple thing to do. So I just pretty much put yogurt in one bowl, and then the recipe calls for a certain nut. I like to use walnuts and just grind it up into a fine powder. So we didn't have the ability to grind it to a fine powder, so I found almond meal, okay? So it could, suffice. So basically you take the toothpick and then you roll it around the yogurt like so, and then you basically just coat it like this. And then you just repeat. Very simple. Now you can, in the recipe, you can combine vanilla extract, and you can sweeten it with date syrup. But I find that the sweetness from the grapes is already sufficient. So that's pretty much it. Very, very simple compared to the last recipe. So, any questions? And then you can put this in a refrigerator. Some of you guys experimented with putting it in the freezer. So these are fun to do. I want to thank the Vegan Society of Hawaii for having me, and I thank for all you guys for coming out. And hope you guys learned a little bit of something. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next go around. Okay. I typically eat the night before. I don't eat the morning of, because most marathons are really early in the morning.
Well, most everything,
I'm currently in Southern California, and I'm pending my Hawaiian license, so I can see most of my work is virtual. So if you knew of someone or you yourself wanted to reach out to me to have an appointment, I have a pending Hawaiian application going on, but most of my work is online, so I see patients online.
So is that LA?
Yes, Orange County. All right, so if anyone wants to help to pass this around. Thanks for everyone for coming out. Appreciate it.